years ago, the world witnessed a historical moment when the first African-American president, Barack Obama, took the Oval Office. And the expectations were high from the black community in the United States, the whole world, and most especially for Africa, who felt he belonged home and should have done a lot more, or could do a lot more, while he was in office. Well, tonight we talk President Barack Obama's legacy on Primetime Live. Welcome, I'm Isabelle Masozera, and I do have a power panel tonight, great men who will be weighing in and talking to me about what their view is on President Obama's legacy. I do have with me the Professor of International Business, Eddie Karuranga. Good to have you on the show.
Nice to meet you.
All right. I also do have with me a celebrated author of the 93 series in 104 books, also a member of the American Political Science Association. Good to have you, Peter.
Thank you.
All right. And also with me is an economist, somebody I do admire, Andrew Mould, who is the officer in charge at the Sub-Regional Office for Eastern Africa of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Great work you're doing, and it's good to have you weigh in tonight on what you think of President Obama. Also, last but not least, somebody that has been working with the future leaders on the continent and also here to give a voice to the young leaders is Kinunu Williams, who is the country director, Cornerstone Development, an international non-governmental organization operating here in Rwanda. Gentlemen, President Obama takes office and the whole world is excited. He has achieved a lot, from making sure AGOA goes on for the next 10 years to Power Africa, the trade initiative, a lot that he has done. However, when you try to Google him, and as I was getting ready for the show tonight, I look for what he has done, and there's endless articles about how Africa is disappointed in his time in office. So then my question to all of you would be, Obama's legacy, an abstract or not? I'll start with you, Ejide.
Well, I think the 8 years is quite a long period of time. And if you want to judge the Obama administration, then you have to take into account different factors. So, and different categories of expectations. For the American people, I think he did a good job. And that's evidenced by the exit poll of job satisfaction. If you look at the last 12 US presidents, he is probably number one. Well, actually, he's number 3 or 4. But number 1 is John F. Kennedy. Number 2 is Eisenhower. Number 3 is George Bush, the father, not George W. Bush. Now, Eisenhower was a 4-star general. George Bush was a former CIA. And Kennedy died in office,
yes,
which makes a difference because he died as a hero after the missile crisis. So if you exclude those 3 because of prerequisite, because of antecedents, which Obama didn't have,
yes,
he's basically number 1.
Okay, so in your opinion, you were saying he is actually a legend that we should be celebrating here in Africa, and the rest of the world should be doing the same.
For the American people who elected him.
And Africa.
Now, Africa, coming back to Africa, Africa had too much expectation because he has Kenyan roots, because that was the first African-American president. Exactly. Let me put one small thing. The African, and I was on the Obama campaign,
yes,
because by that time I was teaching in the US in Virginia, and I was part of the organizing committees, and we went throughout the country. I went to Indiana, Charlottesville, I went to Georgia, I followed the campaign trail.
Yes.
The African-American, in the beginning, the African-American community was not very excited. They dragged feet. They endorsed Obama after he won the Democratic nomination. So for the African-American community in the beginning, the expectations were not very high because they didn't believe he could win.
Yes.
But the African on the continent.
Let's bring it to the continent.
For the continent, the excitement was very high because of the Kenyan origins, because he had visited Kenya, because he had written a book actually about his trip to Kenya, and then all of a sudden we had too much expectation. And the first term...
Did he meet them?
The first term was disappointing.
The second term?
The second term was for me, if you look at initiatives, first of all, for any U.S. president, the first term is always kind of
trying
silent,
to find your footing.
And he didn't touch, he didn't modify, he didn't demean any previous program towards Africa. He kept all the program set up by his predecessor, which is a good thing. In the second term, then came the visits to Africa, then came the power initiative to Africa. That was probably too little and too late.
It seems to me that you are politely saying that, yes, he is a legend.
Yes, but
to the Africans.
But he was late.
Okay, so I'll move on to you, Peter. What do you think of his legacy?
I agree with some of them that he said. I think that he has done some good things, but on the whole, I disagree. I think there are several reasons which have been counted against him. There was overall expectation because he was the first black American.
So, and rightly so.
Yes, and also in Africa too, as you rightly mentioned, there are a lot of expectation that he could do something more for Africa. Yes. Now, I think that's quite natural for people to have this kind of expectation. If you are black, then you will think that he could do something more for you. However, put that aside for the moment, you also ask the question if he has been attracted. I think there's some truth about that too because of his relationship with the Republican Party. And the Democratic Party and the Republican Party has been competing about it. So it makes life a bit more difficult for him. Having said that, which I agree with him, having said that, I think that if you are a great president, you should do something to unite. That's what makes...
Are you saying he didn't do enough to unite?
Look at the three greatest American presidents, Washington, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. They faced the same problem, but they had the ability to unite.
When you say unite, who are you talking about?
That means that if you're a great leader, you should have the ability to allow people to work together with you, to unify them, even though when they are polarizing, a great leader means you have the political ability to make people work for you. That's why, by definition, politics is the art of the impossible. That means that if you are a great leader, you should be able to make people do things for you in a way they may not be able to do for you.
He says that in his first term, he faced a lot of resistance and he faced a lot of problems that he probably inherited from Bush. And then the second term is the only time he had to do something. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree. I think there is just an excuse for that. Look, anyone who succeeded George Bush, the junior, could be better, no matter what because he messed up so much.
Are you saying the yardstick for Barack
anyone,
Obama
even
was
in
too
Trump,
low?
Clinton, anyone who, if they were to succeed him, could have done so much better because Bush was ranked by many American historians as one of the worst American presidents in the modern era. In fact, last time when I looked at the data, he was ranked number 7 or number 6 or number 5 in terms of the worst, not in terms of the best. Now, having said that, we need to be much more concrete in the sense that if you think he's the greatest, what has he done to achieve? If you say that he's not, then what has not done? Now, look at all the things that he said that he would have done, but he did not do it. Look, the nuclear-free world, he did not do that. The climate
when you
change,
say he didn't do that, let's go back to the nuclear-free world. What exactly are you referring to?
Because he wants to have a nuclear-free world in the sense that he get
he
rid of the nuclear weapons.
To try and shut down the different countries that were nurturing these weapons.
Yes, he has a vision. That's why he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Part of that because of his vision, that he wants to reduce the nuclear weapons of the major powers.
He failed to do that?
He did not do that. Number 2, he wants to close the Guantanamo base to avoid torture. He did not do that. And number 3, he wants to reset the relation with Russia. He did not do that.
Number
4, the same thing with China. He did not.
Peter,
and number 5, the Middle East.
Hold on that.
He also did not.
You have been quiet, Andrew. What do you think of what he's saying?
Well, I think...
I know you're an economist.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say these are political aspects to it. I mean, I think the first thing an economist would stress is the dire state of the economy when Barack Obama came into power. The global financial crisis was something really unprecedented. I mean, it was the worst recessionary situation since the 1929 crash. So, it was particularly difficult those first couple of years sorting out the mess of the global financial crisis. if you look at the performance at the end of that period, I mean, now the economy's recovered fairly well, but the whole global economy is fairly sluggish. There's still a lot of challenges. I personally, as an economist, feel that there's still some issues regarding regulation of the financial sector that weren't properly tackled, either in the United States or elsewhere, actually. I mean, I think in Europe there's still problems regarding the financial markets.
Let's bring it home. Let's talk about Africa. Did he do enough for Africa? And I want to pick on especially some of the things that he tried to do, and in his defense, he feels he contributed. For example, he did come to Africa, but then the critics say his coming coincided with the coming of the president of China, which then gave birth to a new era where we see China very involved in Africa. And some of the critics have gone on to say it became a cancer that ate up the economy of Africa because, again, the money is going back to China and the Africans are not so comfortable with what's happening. It is blamed on Obama's administration. What do you have to say about that?
What exactly is blamed on Obama's administration? The presence of China in Africa?
Yes.
I don't think that would be fair, actually.
I mean,
China's been engaging more. China's been engaging incredibly across the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, but particularly in East Africa, for example. You'll see that the share of trade with China has gone up in direct proportion that trade with the Europeans and the United States has been declining in relative terms, not in absolute terms necessarily. So the rise of Chinese presence in Africa is a fact, I think, which there's been difficulties, no doubt, about that relationship. But on balance, it's been generally very positive for the continent. I think most economists would agree that it's helped. For example, during the global financial crisis, normally for Africa, it's terrible when the high-income markets have faced recession or the economies are not doing well. What we saw in the 2008-2009 was a very atypical crisis because for Africa, commodity prices collapsed very shortly and then they quickly recovered. And that was partly the China effect. That was because China continued to grow very fast rate and its demand for commodities continued. So really China's acted as a shock absorber for the African continent. And I think that's a very positive dimension.
Okay.
Now, the US has continued to engage. It does feel probably like the Europeans do, that there's a degree of competition there for influence and they've been losing that battle. But the US has been importing enormous amounts of fuel from Africa.
Would you say enough? Because the US was importing, and way before Barack Obama was in office. Do we see a significant increase in trade between the US and Africa as a continent during his time in office?
I was actually looking at the figures just before this came onto the show again. And actually, sub-Saharan Africa trade with exports to the United States actually peaked around 2008 in absolute terms, and then they've declined. And I think that shadows more the prices of commodities on the one hand, but also the fact that the US has started to become more oil independent because of the shale gas and the moves to exploit their own energy resources more. So that's changed the picture rather.
So I'm going to bring in William here. What do you think of what he's saying? Do you think that the US did enough to help increase the trade with Africa during Obama's administration?
Well, let me just first underscore one thing. When President Obama took office in 2008, he was facing two major challenges in the US. One was the financial crisis that had hit the US and the whole world, but also the US was involved in two major wars, that's in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, many Africans saw President Obama as the messiah of hope, because they thought that having African roots would guarantee him, doing a lot to Africa. But I also want to say that his leadership, his legacy, has had pros and cons on it, because he did some good things for Africa in his 8 years reign, but also in some areas he did not.
Let's start with the good.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, did he do for Africa?
I think one of the things that he did was inspiring young people. When he came at a time when everything was not good in the US and globally, so he came with that energy, he came with that morale that things can change. He wanted to challenge the status quo in Washington.
Can we pin down one thing that he did on the African continent to inspire that?
Look at AGOA, for example. I think
one would argue that AGOA was not his initiative. He inherited
yeah, it wasn't,
that.
but I think it had lost momentum. So he's coming in, trying to bring back the momentum that AGOA had lost. And today, you look at so many enterprises in Africa that have benefited from AGOA. And many small businesses.
What has let's zero it down to Rwanda.
Yes.
How has Rwanda benefited, for example, from AGOA? Do we see actual impact?
Well, look at USAID, for example. USAID is supporting many small businesses in Rwanda, especially in the upcountry, and it's President Obama's initiative. Or pressing on that has really brought that.
USAID was there way before Barack
Yes,
Obama. I'm going to bring in Peter here.
It was, but to some degree, it wasn't really
as active as it is today. I would say that might be subject to debate. What do the rest think? Peter, let's go back to you.
I can quite understand. It's very understanding for a lot of people, especially in Africa, to be disappointed because they have great expectations. So I'm quite sympathetic to some people. They say that, well, he's not doing too much. In a way, he's not doing too much. But remember that America is not an African country. America, in many ways, is still a European, a white country. The majority of people in America are white. So you cannot expect America to do a lot for Africa. Obama does not own America, even though he's the first black. By the way, it's not quite right to say that he's a black. He's mixed. I think his mother is white,
yes,
and his father is so
Kenyan.
He's mixed. Yes. He's not the first black. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The question over
African American, he still has the African blood, so we can claim he's still our cousin from home.
It's just semantic. The point is that I think that there's over expectation, and not just in Africa. I have been here. In Africa for quite some time, and I spoke to a lot of people. The majority of the black people that I have spoken to, they get disappointed. I can understand that. Now, you might ask, what has he done for Africa? It's easy to make an assertion, but give me the facts. What are the achievements?
And that's my question to you. Exactly. Can you point down 1, 2, 3 things that you can say he's done?
With him. I do not think that Obama has done much for Africa. Now, there's something he has done. When I was in Ethiopia, Obama has a scholarship for black leaders. So I met someone who was chosen to go to the White House to meet him. And that scholarship allowed a lot of black leaders in Africa to go to America for education for this. So he had done something for Africa in that sense. But we are talking about the global perspective, and I don't see much of anything else. Now, on top of that, not just in Africa, but also in America, a lot of blacks also get disappointed with him.
Okay,
what he has done.
I'm going to bring in Ejide here. Again, Yali, we cannot argue, has done incredible for Africa, but in your opinion, I'm going to ask, should we be expecting Obama to even do anything for us? And I take that from a tweet that came in from our Twitter page. Remember, you can tweet us at Isabelle Masozera. You can go to Primetime Live RW on Twitter, or at RBA Rwanda, at RTV English. Leave us a question, a comment. Let us know. Barack Obama, a legend or a disappointment to Africa? And we do have, yes, Lucy Mbabazi, who says, President Obama owed Rwanda and Africa nothing. He was a president of the United States with a mess that he inherited to clean up. And she also goes on to say that only our leaders can lead Africa's transformation by caring enough about the people to deliver good services. Not Obama. Obama can't. What do you have to say about what she's saying?
I'm buying Lucy Mbaba's opinion, actually, because, and I think tonight we are mixing so many aspects. I think we should go analytically and look at the political side. First of all, we differentiate the two worlds, the Africa and the United States. He was president of the United States. Now, I want to repeat what I said in the beginning. Check the polls, the exit polls, the satisfaction level for American people put him in number 3 on the list of the last 12 presidents.
The statistics might argue against you on that, because even if we're not talking about Africa and we talk about the black community itself in the U.S., unemployment rose during his time in office.
Absolutely.
How do you justify that?
And the auto industry recovered, and the financial crisis is behind, and everything is perfect.
Could he have done better?
I don't think so, given the challenges, because he had the Iraqi war to finish. He had the Afghanistan crisis. He had the Syria.
Has there been a president that came before him that did not inherit any type of trouble?
I don't. If you exclude the Great Depression, the Second World War and probably the Independence War, I think he's one of the 5 presidents who had a bad legacy from his predecessor. The worst was the last 10, 15 years back. Now, coming back to Africa, let's make things clear. From a political perspective, I think the biggest contribution of the Obama administration is the change, the shift from the strong men. Remember his speech in Accra, the strong men versus the strong institution. The U.S., the former 12 or 15 presidents, the U.S. administration used to rely on dictatorship to implement their policies in Africa. The support to Mobutu, to Savimbi, to all those bad guys was based on the principle of having good and strong friends. And Obama brought a fundamental shift to strong institutions. Of course, that doesn't please everybody. But for civil society, for NGOs, for people fighting for democracy, for free election, for any basic human rights, that was a significant shift in the U.S. mindset.
All right, we need to take a break. We'll come back to you. But the question will still remain, even with that said, did he do enough? You can definitely go to Twitter. Let us know what you think. Remember, Isabelle Masozera is my name, and this is Primetime Live. You get to have your say. Just let us know what you think. We now take a break. We'll be right back.
Now that is the smell of a new day, new business ideas, new opportunities, and above all, a new chance to start over. Forget about the news. We want to talk about the stocks that are trading, what companies have been listed, and the exchange rate. And also the money matters, not just regionally, but also globally. Take a look. They are the right arm of every business world. The small-scale businesses, they contribute a lot to our economies, and yet they face new challenges every single day. Now, I come in to stop all that. Listen to them, find a common ground, and come up with a solution. And I also give you an insight into the opportunities in their business world.
Join us every Tuesday on Business Digest.
Barack Obama, the first African-American president. He served 2 terms. Many have called him a hero. Others have defined him as the typical disappointment. What do you think of his legacy? Is he a hero or not? We discussed that today on Primetime Live, and we did right back in. Before we went for a break, you were putting down a number of things that you said were in his favor.
I was simply suggesting that we go analytically and
into what he has done
the political
politically.
side,
okay,
and then the economic side or the trade side. For me, as a business person, I don't think it's the role of a U.S. president to make sure that we make business with America, because
but don't you think that he can play a role in facilitating that?
Yeah, he can facilitate it, but look at the geography of trade. So the American exchange with goods with Canada and Mexico and China, those are the 3 main partners. If you look at figures, we basically go under the African Growth Opportunity Act. The African countries exported only 30 billion US dollars. The exchange with Mexico is roughly 500 billion.
Yes.
Exchange with Canada is 500 billion. Exchange with China, 600 billion. So we represent a very, very small portion of the exchange between the US and Africa. Now, the reason behind those small numbers between Africa and the US have to be checked. Why do we exchange so
And you believe
small
that's
volume?
not his responsibility,
Now,
but ours?
What Obama did is extending the African Growth Opportunity Act. The responsibility of trade falls on both sides, the US and Africa. So don't get an excuse for Africa not exporting to
But
the US.
still, the question is, did
Now,
he do enough?
Did he do enough?
Could he have done better to increase the opportunities for
First of all,
Africa,
the
trade-wise?
United States economy is a free market. It's a free market. So now people exchange with whoever they think is giving them
And
the
he
best
can't
return on
control
investment.
that. Andrew, you're the economist on the set today. I would like to shift the attention to something that we can actually credit Obama's administration with, Power Africa. Some people have described the initiative as already crippled, as a still baby. And a lot of these descriptions that make you think that maybe it's not doing as well as it should, and that's his biggest achievement. What do you make of that?
I actually don't have an evaluation of Power Africa, to be honest. I haven't been following very closely that initiative. I have a colleague in my office that covers energy issues, and that's not my area. Actually, I was going to make a few comments actually on the AGOA issue, because I tend to agree with my colleague here. What we've seen in the trade side is predominantly the Africa-US relationship is based on those primary commodities still, and above all oil. That makes up 90% of AGOA exports. And that wasn't really the intention behind these kind of initiatives. The same with the European Union with its everything but arms. The idea is to help countries diversify into different products. And it hasn't tended to happen. And there's a lot of different reasons for that.
Do we blame that on his administration?
No, we don't. But
I
think it's in the nature of these kind of preferential market access agreements, actually. They're a little bit flawed. Sometimes it's to do with rules of origin, which make it more difficult. There's a few countries in our sub-region which have managed to export under AGOA reasonably well. Madagascar was doing quite well in textiles, for example, but then it hit some political problems and it lost its AGOA access, and that industry declined quite sharply. So I think there's a general problem for Africa in terms of the way it trades with the rest of the world. We still haven't diversified enough. You see that the same pattern of trade actually with China-Africa trade as well, still exporting predominantly primary commodities. So I don't think you can blame that, particularly on his administration. Okay. And as one of the colleagues was saying earlier, AGOA wasn't his initiative anyway, and AGOA was an initiative he inherited.
We do credit him for pushing it on.
Yeah.
But Peter, what do you make of that? I'll take you back to a question I asked him earlier. Power Africa initiative, where he tried to provide electricity for as many households as he could, and increase how much electricity is on the continent to deal with the issue of Africa as a black continent and give us a better face. It's been described as a failure so far.
Just quickly, two comments based on what I have heard on both sides. I do agree with some of that, but I want to make two clarifications. Number one, I think that based on my observation in Africa, I think there's the wrong attitude for Africans to always think that the international community to come here and help you to solve your problems. This is a long-term problem for Africa if the Africans always have this kind of mindset. Based on my research over here in Africa, time again and again and again, when I talk to the local black population, they always say, well, the United Nations do this, China should help us do this, the US should help us do this. And when you have in West Africa, when the Ebola epidemic, they ask the US, UN, China come and give them donations, this and that. I think they should stop this kind of mentality, that you ask other people to come in and solve your own problem, international aid. So this is the wrong
one of the ways that Africa can actually do that is if it gets the support that it needs in the right places, open opportunities for trade. But I'll ask you this question.
I have no problem about the foreign aid. I'm just saying that do not become too dependent on it to the point that you have the mindset over here. That's one problem. Another problem related to that is the other side of the same coin. They also expect the government to do a lot for them too. So I think that in the longer term, it's important for Africa to two things. Number one, to be more self-reliant. I think that's very important. Look what you can do for Africa instead of keep asking the international community. Always, when you have a problem, always ask the international community to come here and help you. Remember,
so in other words, you're saying it's a selfish thing to even expect Barack Obama to have contributed in a way to
fine. But remember, other countries, when they come here to Africa and help you, they don't give you for free. They expect something too. So aid is always coming in with some attachments. And after you give them money, now they say, okay, how about this? Well, I want you to this and this. So I think remember,
he seems to disagree with you.
It's about the cultural identity
let's hear what he
about
has
what's
to say.
important African.
Please.
I'm not denying that historically we had that perception or that way of thinking, but I'm inviting my colleague to look at the new leadership in Africa.
It's changing.
So it has completely changed. So we are talking of trade and not
it's
aid.
rhetoric still.
So most of the government...
I agree.
And just to put what you both
They
say
have been
in
talking this for
perspective.
decades now. I know about this. It's rhetoric. In reality, it's still,
But
look at
you're
West
talking
Africa.
about, there's been a
year.
transition according to
Last
what he's
year
saying
was-
and what he's saying over here, that maybe that was the Africa before. But the Africa now is trying to change to be self-reliant. Now, I'll ask a question. Barack Obama stood and said that his focus was to help Africa become not dependent on international aid, and what he was trying to do was make it a partner to different continents to be able to trade. Was he able to do that?
Yes, because most of the initiatives which were put forward by his administration was to make sure that we trade with Africa and then we don't keep aiding it. And now, look at the business from both perspectives. If you look at the U.S. side and the African side, both should forge a win-win situation. Now, the critical question we should raise tonight is, why did AGOA fail? And that's probably the right question to ask, because the AGOA was meant to benefit to both U.S.
We will start with you. You were with the man when he came to office. You understood his vision. Why did it fail?
Why did he fail to promote the AGOA opportunity, the African Growth Opportunity Act? Because the inception of the act was flawed in the beginning because of two things. One, AGOA is simply an access to the market. It doesn't provide any supporting service. It doesn't provide any human capital.
Did he have the power to improve that in
so
any
it's simply
different
a legal
way?
framework. So whenever you put forward a legal framework without supporting service, without human capital...
Was it in his power to create the support system
now,
that
if I
makes it
were
work?
in his position, I would tell the U.S. business that there is an opportunity in Africa. But
You're saying he failed to do that, in other words?
he failed to put in place mechanisms to forge the supporting services which are needed to promote AGOA. Now, the Power Africa came too late. That's what I said in the beginning. That was too little and too late.
Okay.
But the initiative was good.
William, let me pick you. You look like you're burning to say something.
I just
on
wanted
this.
to interject on what Peter was saying. I think Africa is changing, if you can see. And with the current leadership, I mean, many things are changing. But also we have to know that Africa's continuous dependence on the West is also to a large extent due to the interference of the West. They have kept many conflicts in Africa, what we call conflict entrepreneurs. But to be honest, I think many things are changing when you look at the motivation and the morale. And
let's go back to the conflict. You
Yeah.
say there's interference from the West, and in this particular case, let's zero it down to Barack Obama's administration. What do you mean exactly?
Look at the Libyan case, late Gaddafi. Libya was more stable during Gaddafi's time than now. It has increased more ISIS because there's no
Could Barack Obama's presidency leadership
he
helped in a way?
That it is his greatest regret, because I think he didn't handle it the way a president of a powerful nation should have handled it. Because if even Trump, president-elect, told him, you know what, it's your greatest failure. But I want to say that the perception of we Africans vis-a-vis the West, I think a lot has changed. When you look at young people, when you look at many opportunities that our governments are creating, I think a lot has to be desired and a lot is changing. And for me, I see a lot of hope for the future, better than maybe 2 decades ago.
Okay, now I'm going to bring you all in on something. Barack Obama, according to most of the people on the internet, has been now named the drone president and will be going down in history according to many as such. A lot of bloodshed has been blamed on his leadership, and his interference with what's happening with African politics has also been something that the Africans are not too happy about. Care to comment?
Yeah, just very quickly. See, this is exactly the problem here. It's not just in Africa, but also in America. In America, when blacks have some problem, they blame on black slavery. In Africa, now they have some problem, now they blame on West colonialism, Western intervention.
But isn't that a fact?
I agree, but I also disagree, because I think that you are blaming other people for your own problems too. A lot of problems in Africa are not just a problem of Western intervention. It's also a problem of, look, think about this. You talk about Western intervention. How come black African countries do not intervene in the West, but the West has intervened in Africa? Because we do not have the kind of power and technology and development that they have. So how much more do you want to blame? You blame, okay, what happened before the European came? Whom do you blame? You blame God for that? So I think it's time to stop blaming. The same in America.
Okay, let's stop it. You're saying something.
They blame slavery.
I think
We have to stop this. Many of them do not even know what slavery is.
Peter, let's just hear what
so you blame the Western colonialism. It happened 700 years ago now.
Let's hear what he has to say.
Stop blaming.
I think.
Are we blaming?
To calm Peter, we need to take him to historical arguments.
No, I have done a lot of research about this. I know more than you do
the notion
about
of
this.
empires. Empires have already existed.
I have written books about it. Do not blame too much. Look at Asia, look at Hong Kong, Singapore. They have suffered British colonialism.
Peter, I'd like my show back now. I'd like my show back.
It's not true.
Let me first take this away from
the time
that.
and the historical event.
You blame too much.
Look at the Mesopotamia. Look at the Roman Empire. Look at the Portuguese when they were dominating the world. Look at the Netherlands when they were ruling the world. Look at the British Empire. Look at how the US took over. Look at how China is taking over now. So it's a complex. Look at previous empires in Africa.
How come you were not an empire? They were the empire.
I'm going to bring in Andrew on the side of the economy
could not develop
Peter?
as much as they do.
Peter, let's listen to
You blame
Andrew
them for
on
that.
this.
How come you did not become the empire yourself? You did not because you were less developed than they were.
Let's bring it back to Obama and the
You see that?
economy.
Blaming is not answering the
On the
question.
economy, could we have done better? And are you buying into what he's saying? Are we making excuses and maybe Obama is not responsible for having to pull us by the hand? Are we making excuses or are we growing?
Well, I mean, I think the first point is, I think somebody's already said this actually, that under the first Obama administration, he had a lot of distractions. Africa was clearly not one of Obama's priorities at that time. He was busy fixing the economy, dealing with the international conflicts and the rest of it. So I think it's quite understandable that it wasn't the top of his agenda. And I seem to remember there was quite a lot of impatience about when is Barack Obama going to come and visit. You know, he wasn't even physically coming to the continent initially. So that's understandable. I think the global economy has changed dramatically over the last 2-3 decades. I mean, even if you look at patterns of trade for Africa, what you see is a decline in trade with the West, with Europe and with the United States progressively over time, as a share, as a percentage share of total trade, and you see the rise of the emerging markets and developing countries. Now, part of that is actually intra-African trade has actually been growing quite fast, and part of it has also been with new partners such as China and India, or at least relatively new, you know, because China also has a long history of engagement with the continent, as does India. So you've seen different patterns of development now. I don't see Africa as being dependent on the West at all these days in terms of economics.
So you do agree with the two of them that the trend is
70% of
changing.
trade is with emerging and developing economies. Okay. Only 30% now is with the high-income economies.
Would you say that Barack Obama did enough to facilitate Africa, and that is why maybe there's a mind shift with his approach? Because he clearly came out and said Africa can help itself.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think everything hinges on what happens in the United States any longer. It hinges on a lot of global factors, such as commodity markets. We're still excessively dependent on what happens in global commodity markets. So you now see what happens in Angola or Nigeria. Their economies are suffering because of the oil price. So we are too excessively exposed to that, and there is a domestic agenda there about diversifying our economies out of dependence on primary commodities. But the patterns of trade have changed, and the patterns of dependence have. In one area, the United States continues to be very important in our sub-region, and that's clearly in development cooperation. The US is the #1 bilateral donor for Kenya, for Uganda, for Rwanda. So they still provide quite a bit of development finance in there. But I think the true development picture is, as President Kagame insists very often, it's nothing to do with development aid, it's to do with self-initiative, it's to do with, the business sector, having a more dynamic domestic economy. I think we'd agree.
Most of the economists...
Most politicians agree with that now.
Yes.
I think there's a...
well, I can see all of them
so
nodding.
I think the debate we were having...
There's something that you all agree on.
Was a little bit...
But question is, the economists did say that maybe there was not so much interest for Barack Obama trade-wise or in Africa. Do you think that's true? There was lack of motivation?
As a share of trade for the US, clearly it's not a priority for the United States. The economic relations...
And should we have expected that to be different simply because we had an African-American president?
It's Kenyan heritage. Not necessarily, no. I mean, particularly given the mess that the economy was in, the global economy was in when he arrived in power.
To be politically incorrect, I think a major problem was not because Obama was busy or focusing on the recession. The African economy is not that important to America. American leaders do not pay too much. Let's be politically incorrect here. Let's be blunt about this and frank about this. People don't want to talk about this. Is that Africa is not that important to America. America have a lot of other things which are much more important. Russia or China and some other. It's not because Obama is too busy and not thinking about this. It's just that the African economy is not that important internationally. It doesn't mean that it's useless. No, you can still trade with that. But in terms of the global American trading system, the African trade with America is just a small portion of the American
I think
total
our colleague
trade.
here has a point, but I mean it's changing the pattern of, for example,
the total weight is still quite small.
Yes, absolutely. 15 years ago, Africa was approximately 3% of global GDP. It's now over 5%. So things are changing. They're going in the right direction. As a percentage share of global trade, Africa is also a very small place. Effectively, if your first concern is fixing your domestic economy, as Barack Obama's probably priority was initially, then he's going to be looking at the most important trading partners and the rest of it.
Africa's trade situation or economy really a priority to Barack Obama?
No, I think we all agreed it wasn't.
So we now get your stand on that. Coming back to you, yes, you had a comment on the same.
Yeah, the problem is we are mixing issues again because the trade is a benefit for two nations. So it should be beneficial for both Americans and Africans. Now, how do we put this? How do we promote this? And what is the role of both institutions on both sides of the continent, the Atlantic? Now, if you are an American, if you are a president or any business people from the United States, I think what Americans failed to understand in Africa, and which China did understand, is the concept of the bottom of the pyramid market. So the bottom of the pyramid markets in Africa are composed of millions and billions of people who are looking for water, who are looking for healthcare, who are looking for education, who can afford to pay for those services. So China understood before anybody else in the world that he could invest in infrastructure, he could sell cheap houses, he could build hospitals, and that could pay. So the U.S. business people, and that's what the second failure of the AGOA Opportunity Act, the African Growth Opportunity Act. The first failure was not building enough supporting service. The second failure is not to understand the concept of the bottom of the pyramid market where the U.S. business.
Okay, before I go to read what we have on our Twitter page, yes, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say there's an interesting parallel there because at the moment people are talking about the rebalancing of the Chinese economy and how that could potentially benefit Africa, but through the relocation of industries, manufacturing industries, labor-intensive ones, towards Africa. Interestingly, the new administration in the United States is talking about exactly the converse. They're trying to
industrialize,
reindustrialize and bring things back.
What does that mean for Africa?
it doesn't mean very much, really, because in terms of having manufacturing jobs linked with the United States, the level is really very low and confined to a very few countries in Africa, so South Africa principally, Kenya a little bit, but that's principally
what do you predict
it impacts on Mexico. Mexico is the country that is particularly worried about this phenomenon,
But then still, Africa has a valid reason to also be concerned. What do you think the future is going to look like when that happens for Africa? Do we see GDP dropping?
Do you know, I think we'd all agree.
Or are we going to do simply okay without
the situation
the
at the moment is of a lot of uncertainties about exactly what the new economic program is going to entail. And for most economists, I think there's a mixed evaluation. So, for example, there's quite a lot of support for the fiscal spending on infrastructure in the US, and that might give a boom to the global economy. That might help, you understand. There'll be a change in interest rate policy, but there's other elements in terms of trade policy which concern economists quite a lot. So I'm not sure we're faced by so much uncertainty in the global economy in any way at the moment because we don't know the policies of the new administration. We have Brexit in Europe, uncertainties with European integration processes going forward. China is slowing down. India is slightly moving up.
So the next opportunity is probably Africa.
Okay,
yes,
so maybe it's looking up for Africa.
Let's end on the positive.
The trend in the global economy, the global business, there are two things which the Trump administration is probably ignoring and which are going to be counterproductive for them. It's the global trend is multinational companies are free today to move their factors of production to any place in the world. So that means if you look at your iPhone, your tablet, you could anything, any car. The car is manufactured in more than 50 countries all over the world. So we trade activities. We no longer trade goods. So the Trumpism is taking us back to trading goods and services. And the new economy is trading activities, where 40% of your iPhone is manufactured in China, 20% of research and development is done in Singapore, and then the distribution is made in the US, the research and development.
Let's go back to Obama and move away from the economy, move away from the political arena of it, and go to what his contribution has been like in terms of making sure there's access to health services for the people on the continent, and also education. Has he contributed in any way? I'll start with you, William.
I would rather talk about he's really tried to enforce the Paris Climate Change Act. I would rather speak from that perspective. And as per yesterday, I think the US government is giving $500 million to developing countries to try and try and help in that area. Because as you may all know, China and US pollute the environment than any other country in the world. So, and that has adverse effects on even other developing countries and other countries of the world.
Before I come back to whether or not that's an actual fact, Andrew, I'm going to come back to you. Has Obama done enough in terms of ensuring that the African children have access to education and the women and the children have access to health services?
I think most people now would say that's the primary responsibility of governments in Africa. Is it not to provide health care and education for their citizens? Now, the US continues to support, as an important bilateral donor, a lot of programs, particularly in the area of health.
And did we see anything significant that was done during the Obama time? Now, I know he had
the initiative started, with Bush, actually, with the Global Fund and the American support for that. There was a large injection for HIV treatment, for example. Very true. That's been wound down recently, and I think that's causing some countries some problems that were, receiving a lot of financing through that route. But ultimately, the healthcare and education agenda has to be one for national governments. So the donors have a role there, but they shouldn't be the protagonists, should they?
So we shouldn't have expected anything unique during Obama's administration. I'll come back to you, Peter. Anything interesting you feel he did in that line?
Yeah. I can understand that we are now in Africa, and this is African TV. We are supposed to say something which can be quite positive to inspire and all that. But if you look at the reality, it's not like that. If you look at the global economic order, it's shifting now from the west to the east. let's say, especially China. For example, in 2014, only 2 years ago, China surpassed the U.S. as the largest economy in the world if measured by the GDP PPP, purchasing power parity, which is a measurement of production instead of using, let's say, the normal exchange rate is for trade. That's a different issue. And also, China has surpassed the U.S. as the largest trading power on earth. It's no longer the U.S. So one of the major reasons, by the way, and we have been talking about this, how come, let's say, Obama and all that is not been focusing too much on trade, or it's not how come America is not doing too much, is because the global economic order has shifted. It's China now who is the main global economic growth engine.
So you're saying that the U.S. is not where it used to be, and we should use that as an excuse for Obama not doing enough?
We have not talked about Trump yet.
Okay.
The reason why Trump is so angry with China and also with other countries too, and also with a lot of different issues, is because of the decline of the U.S. And that's why a larger problem you have been asking how about Obama is not doing this or this or this for Africa. In a major sense, it's not because of Obama, Trump, Obama, Clinton, Bush, whatever it is, because the economic order has shifted. Now, it's not just China anymore. India will be the next one. And that's why I have talked about this more than 10 years ago in my publication, is that if China and India now is going to be pick up that kind of economic engine, which the West has been dominant for a long time. So we have to put into the historical perspective. And this even more so, let's say, in the next decade or even several decades.
Ejide, before I come to you, I know you have something to say. Let's quickly read some of the comments that are coming through on our Twitter page. I do have Lonzen Rujira here who is saying, hope, yes, we can, a dream from our father. And he also goes on to say that, yes, Africa shouldn't have been expecting so much from Obama. He says, also somebody else here who is Mukizawo saying supporting Rwanda's health sector was not in Obama's campaign manifesto, but he supported Africa's energy sector. And also still more comments coming through. All right. There are quite many, but we'll read just as many as we can. George in Schulz is saying that the impact on Africa is one that Africa chooses to have through Obama's leadership. That's not in his power. It's up to Africans to take advantage of his time in office. All right, Lucy Mbabazi says, like he said when addressing the Ghanaian Parliament, Africa's future is up to Africans. Yes, we cannot read everything that we have coming through, and our time is definitely fast spent. But before we wind up, you had something to say?
I would like to end with a note which is slightly different from the Afro-pessimism. So Peter's Afro-pessimism is we are beggars, we blame others, and I'm just reminding him, and when he said that China is, when he mentioned the historical perspective, then I said, well, glad Peter is now coming back to reality, because power is shifting, because trends are shifting, because empires have already existed, and empires have replaced empires. Brazil has taken over the British economy is number 5. China is taking over as number 1. And tomorrow, another trend in the global economy now, not only multinational companies are free to move factors of production, but also trade is no longer based on multilateral institutions like the World Trade Organization. Now, trade is concentrated in regional communities like East African Community, South Asian Community, Mercosur. So those are new trends, and we have to cope with it.
All right.
Now, coming back to your education, it's African leaders' responsibility to make sure that they educate their own human capital.
And because like you said, we should not depend on the West. Well, that's all the time that we had. I know we cannot exhaust when it comes to talking through 8 years of Barack Obama's leadership. Well, he's definitely done a lot. He's not a hero that can make everything come to life, but he's definitely done enough to be celebrated and considered a legend. That's all that we had for you. Isabelle Masozera is my name. This is Primetime Live, and we come back to you next week. Good night.